This is the Sports Content Gameplan, the podcast where we go behind the scenes with the creators shaping how we see sports today. I'm your host, Isaac Solina, and each week I have conversations with the people behind the videos, photos, stories, and strategies that brings the game to life. We talk creativity, storytelling, and the real work that happens behind every highlight. In today's episode, I'm joined by Samu Gabor, NBA YouTube consultant, filmmaker, and that's just the start. We talk about his filmmaking roots, the power of repeatable show formats, working with NBA teams, his favorite video, and much more. Let's get it going. Samu, welcome to the Game Plan.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk all things YouTube.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. It's a sunny day in Europe, in Berlin. So summertime here. I am having all my American friends come and enjoying this side of the pond during this time, and I'm activating as a tour guide part-time. So I can't complain.
Europe summer is different. It's the best.
Europe is indeed different. But I'm excited to get into some things and talk.
Before we get into it, I'll just start with some quick questions. So, do you have a favorite channel or social media?
I do. I love YouTube specifically. And on YouTube, I watch a lot of, and I look up to a lot of Red Bull's content. We've had the opportunity to work with them, but they keep on pushing the boundaries of what's possible on the platform. They just had a big football video done with Jurgen Klopp, with Neymar, with Enrique, so many big names, and they absolutely crush it.
Do you have any favorite type of content?
Ooh, that's a good question. I really love repeatable show formats. So I think some of the best pieces and what works really best, especially in this day and age, is when you come up with an idea that you can execute on week in, week out, or monthly. So there's a lot of, similar recap shows. There's a lot of, film breakdowns, and a lot of character-driven pieces where they find something interesting in someone's day and they're able to kind of look at how the progression of that changes throughout the course of someone's career. So anything that can have something consistently coming out is an absolute favorite.
And you mentioned Red Bull, but do you have any other creators or brands that you are inspired by?
Yeah, plenty. I watch religiously the Colin and Samir show. I have since I was quite young. Hopefully, I'll be traveling to LA later this week and would love to meet them at a summit. I tune into a lot of different podcasts. I go to the gym not super regularly, but quite regularly, and I think there hasn't been a time when I didn't listen to the Diary of a CEO while I was there. That's become like my gym regimen. In terms of show formats, I watch the Jesser team within the basketball space does a fantastic job, and now in football space, and then expanding to other sports. So you always get inspirations from so many creators. Do you have
the best DM you have ever received?
The best DM I've ever received. Favorite? Yeah, it was a combination of DM and in person. When I was in my fourth year, so last year of college, I was already running GOAT. And there's a basketball team at my college. And there was a freshman who was really interested into getting into sports media, and he's seen me around and he knows what I did, and so he was like really shy and really reached out very kindly to just sit in while I'm editing and watch me edit, just out of curiosity. And I was like, yeah, of course, I'd love to have you. And then I had him watch, and now we talk almost on a weekly basis, and that was 3-4 years ago, and we still are in touch every day almost.
And if you would describe the perfect type of content, or the perfect content in 3 words, what would it be?
Perfect content in 3 words. That would not be, let's put a dash in there, but story driven. We can count that as one. Pieces that always have something really meaningful to say in a very intriguing light. Repeatable, I think, will always win. I think when you come up with an idea and you're able to execute on that again and again, you're setting yourself up for success rather than a one-off thing. So that can be a format, that can be a specific idea. Repeatable has been winning on not just YouTube, but most platforms for the past 2 years especially. And the third one would be authentic. I think, audiences at the end of the day see through something that's super surface level, or you're looking for the money of it or whatever it is, but there isn't that passion, that drive behind it. And if you're not doing it for that, there's no space for you long term in this space, because you're going to either burn out or you're going to, lose any sense of reality of what you're actually trying to achieve. So authenticity goes a long way.
When I looked at your resume, if I read it correctly, you started out more on the filmmaking side of the creative world.
Indeed.
So how did you start out, and how did you get into the sports world?
Yeah, I always wanted to be a documentary filmmaker growing up. I started off with, at 9 years old, my brother was editing graduation videos for the class above him graduating, and I came in, I was like, this is some dark magic. Like, I need to learn how he moves around these things on a timeline. And he was really sweet to connect me with actually a friend of his who just graduated and was going to study film in university. And he became kind of like my tutor, mentor for several years after that. So by the time I was 13, 14, I was really set on making, long 10, 15-minute films, whether that's documentary or narrative film. And so around 16, I directed a Prime Video film around a topic that was very near and dear to me. Both the first one was about refugees in Berlin, migrants moving here and their experience and integration into the city. The second one was around racism within Europe, and I talked to a lot of people, and the issue at the time was quite prevalent. This was shortly after also the 2015 refugee crisis, so I was very much interested in studying sociology and making films around it. So actually I had a very kind of serious filmmaking background because of it. And then when I moved to college, I started studying filmmaking and making stories still within the social justice space. I had a film, Hammers of Peace, in my freshman year around activism in New York, specifically around like nuclear weapons. And then when I got to my second and third year, I started to be really interested in building businesses. I wanted to have something where I felt like I managed a team. There was a longer term goal, not just one-off projects. And while I was doing that, I got the opportunity to intern at Slam, which is this basketball magazine in New York. Having grown up playing basketball, it was like the holy grail in a lot of ways. And so when I, got that opportunity, I took it full speed. And when I joined them in 2023, I started as on the social media and video editing. And I had a good knack for understanding what performed well on social media and how to put it together. And as much as many amazing things Slam does, it's a relatively small team, so there's always things that need help and hands-on experience. And there was an amazing intern class in that 2023 semester, and we put our heads together into a lot of different projects. And while I was interning there, I kind of went down the rabbit hole of, oh wow, sports media has so many layers to it, and there's so much you can do. And it kind of led me to start my career on YouTube with Go quite early on, and then I never looked back. I'm in sports ever since, and now expanding to more brands and some stuff beyond sports, but sports is at the core of the business to this day.
And I know Slam very well. I also had a subscription back in the days. All these things. I think that sounds amazing to be able to intern there.
Beautiful office. They just moved to their new office in Long Island City, and it was full of very interesting creative people, very driven, and the typical like New York geeky sports people vibe. So it was a good time.
Like looking back on those lessons you learned in doing this filmmaking and then moving over to like YouTube today, what lessons did you learn early on that still you can apply today?
Yeah, I mean, most things I do today are mainly relevant because of my film background, right? So the stories we tell on YouTube is no different to a story that I used to tell through a long form medium like filmmaking or documentary filmmaking. And so the biggest things that I still look at to this day is how my story arc plays out in a video, right? So like, how is the character that we're building this around? How do we introduce him? How do we keep him relevant throughout the video? How do we keep audiences engaged? A lot of these small things now people learn just through the art of YouTube, and that's their primary source. But I'm still the generation that did grow up on YouTube but had an original film interest and studied film. So I kind of combined both of those worlds. And now that we're moving to film production with the team, you know, on set, actual like crews and managing on set production for teams and sports, especially for brands, it takes me back to like what it was like, 8-7 years ago when I worked on these sets as PAs, and it's now coming kind of full circle in that way, because for so many years now I worked behind a desk, behind a computer, and I'm excited that we're expanding back to on-set production with teams.
You mentioned story-driven as one of your key components for great content, and I think, like looking at YouTube, many people also talk about, you know, success with algorithms and stuff, but how important is storytelling compared to, you know, optimization or the other things?
It's the most important. It's at the core and heart of whatever you do, right? You can optimize, you can really figure out why someone clicks, how they click, but why they stick around at the end of the day is dependent on the story that you tell and on the key components of your video that are essentially not just, you know, the video quality or whatever else drives it, but the actual story that you're trying to drive through. And the first thing that many times in a YouTube process you think about is, yeah, sure, you think about the idea, but then you think about the title, thumbnail, and then how do you build a story around this? How do you actually execute on the intro, on the hook? How do you then satisfy the click from the viewer later on? And these are, it goes hand in hand with the algorithm, but the algorithm, you know, favors good storytelling. The most viral videos that I ever had were all because of good ideas and good stories that we told. And the ones that were, you know, because of a relevant situation in the sports world, I think the Luka trade is a good example for it. They, of course, did well, but they are the most viewed videos of my career so far. So stories have always been what won.
You mentioned GOAT. So you built GOAT to like hundreds of thousands of subscribers and tens of millions of views in a relatively short time. What did you think was it that connected so strongly with the basketball fans growing this channel?
Yeah, I joined GOAT. It was already running around like 20,000 subscribers with, I then, you know, we ran it together with a guy who was an absolute genius in the writing of it. And I shot him an email while I was at Slam to join on the editing side because I saw already the high potential that the storytelling had, and I knew ways that I could improve the editing of it. So when we started it together and in that very beginning stages, it was a lot of putting our heads together and what good stories can we tell and what has gaps in the market that aren't being told. And that was our whole, you know, mantra in the first year. And in the start of 2024 was our big explosion. We were at like 30,000 subscribers. We made videos mostly about Wembanyama and that was his rookie career. So there was a lot of interest around any game he played. Very relevant to today. We were some of the early people who really, really religiously believed in his potential. But then in 2024, we realized that, you know, one of the biggest issues of the NBA, and not just players, but especially audiences, that you have so many games being played on a weekly basis. On average, you have between 4 and 8 games played per day. Multiply that by 7 days, and you have more games than you know what to do with. So if you're a hardcore NBA fan, you have your team that you support. You probably watch all of their games. Maybe you have another team that you're quite interested in and you watch their games. But beyond that, it's impossible to catch up with everything going on in the ethos of the NBA. And sure, you have social media and extended algorithms that show you the most viral moments. but most likely, you know, you don't want to curate your own feed to figure out what's going on. So what we did is we came up with a 20 to 25 minute show that kind of give you a rundown of everything that happened in the NBA that week. And that came out every week, Saturday at 7 a.m. Eastern time. And that was our first kind of explosion onto the YouTube scene, where people loved the story that we told. We curated, you know, some of the both on-court things, off-court things, incredible moments told beautifully with the writing, you know, edited like it was a Netflix documentary that you get to see every week. And it hit really, really well with the audiences. So the first episode came out in the first week of January or last week of December of 2023, somehow like this. And then by episode 4 or 5, we were looking at nearly 1 million views every episode. So it propelled us very early on, very quickly into the YouTube scene.
What was your most viral videos?
Oh, I know. I have one exactly. It was the NBA. How was it? The NBA just went through its boiling point, something with boiling point in February, first week of February. We put the video out at 7 a.m. By the afternoon, it was sitting on 500,000 views, and it hit the YouTube trending tab by the evening. So I think we were like number 20 or 18 on YouTube trending. And I was in the city in New York with my sister, and we were calling with the team. By then we had like a team of 4 people, and we were all like, couldn't believe it that that was, I think, our 5th or 6th episode of the series. And that was the peak of everything. Is that video hit around 1.2 million views in the end. But just that speed that you got when you released the video, and in the first hour it has 100,000, in hour 3 you're looking at like 300, by hour 6 you're like at 500. It's quite a euphoric feeling. So that one for sure takes the cake. Yeah.
You mentioned you scaled the team, so how was it? Was there a big challenge in maintaining quality, you feel, like when you were scaling the team, or were you able to just increase the quality?
Yeah, GOAT was a big operation. I think a lot of people don't know this, that we effectively built a production house that rivaled with, you know, on a much smaller scale than big production companies. But it had on and off in the end 6 rotation of writers working, a rotation of 4 video editors, 2 producers, and the reason for it was that we just kept on scaling the quantity of videos we wanted to publish, but we never wanted to sacrifice quality. And to do that, we had to expand the team so that we could actually handle the amount of output we aimed for. And because of that, you know, it became a very big machine to run, expensive machine, and also a big one. It was in a lot of ways a success. We partnered with the NBA in 2025. We started to produce content together with some teams, and we achieved a lot much faster than we ever thought we would. So it was a super big success, and the people I got to work with through GOAT are some of the most creative and witty people within not just the online space, but as people in general. So I'm super thankful for everything that we got to build at GOAT, and it was one hell of a ride, yeah.
One of the teams you have worked with was the Golden State Warriors, I think.
Yep.
So how was it going from just working with GOAT to actually working together with, you know, NBA teams? Or
yeah, it was an idea I had in early 2025, and that's kind of what led to where I am now in my career. When I think about it too, is I was shocked at the idea that so many NBA teams weren't fully fulfilling their potential in YouTube content. And the Warriors were doing an amazing job. And when I looked at their YouTube channel, I think in February or March of 2025, I saw that they did a video with Six Man, who's another YouTuber in the NBA space. I was like, it was kind of like a eureka moment where I said that that's a great way for NBA teams to get reach, is by collaborating with some of these creators. Little did I know this was way before YouTube introduced their collaboration feature that is now a prominent piece on their app, on their website. At the time, it just had like a little like M dash, and it just said the creator's name at the end of the title, just so you know it's with them. Otherwise, you'd have no idea. So now it's, you know, we're very much spoiled with that feature. But back then, this was quite an innovative thing. And to all the credit of the Warriors, I simply reached out with a cold email to them. It was simply an idea I shared that I think it would have great potential both ways. They were all ears, and and to this day is the smoothest and most, innovative and creative collaborations that I work with on a weekly, monthly basis.
And if we look at the sports creative field or the sports teams and federations overall and YouTube, what are the teams or federations missing with YouTube?
Yeah, that's the age-old question I try to answer on an hourly, weekly, daily basis. A lot. I mean, time moves really fast. 10 years ago, we wouldn't have thought this is what the social media space would look like, either in sport or in the corporate world. Having in-house production teams was kind of like a out of the box, who would ever do that type of idea, maybe even 10 years ago. And now it's the golden standard. Teams, to all their credit, were able to integrate and produce the right content for short form social media. And the reason for that is it's a very fast-paced world, and they have the access to the players and to the facilities to actually get the best content there is on short form to audiences fast. So whenever a Spurs-Knicks finals game wraps, on my feed I see Wemby celebrating in a tunnel through the Spurs' social media channel. Whereas YouTube is not so straightforward of how to actually execute it correctly. You have to think about so many aspects of producing content, not just about the filming and the publishing, but you got to go about title, thumbnail, intro, verifying a click. How do you actually deliver on what is promised? There's so many aspects that it just feels like too big of a beast to handle, and maybe not the best return on the investment. A lot of sponsors at the end of the day come back because of viewership numbers, and those viewership numbers on social media are automatically much higher than YouTube is. But what I argue every day is that what they're missing is the watch time that actually comes with it, right? So in my opinion, when you actually earn the click from the viewer and they want to watch a content that you produced, that is a much, much higher level to hit with an audience that it is on short form, where you're just recommended something automatically. I argue that YouTube is not really a social media platform in that sense, but it's an actual video content, a video streaming platform, because it's a click and watch platform. You have to have the audience decide to watch your video, and because of that, once they do, you can really keep them around and convert them into fans of not just the team, but your own content that you produce in YouTube. And then the actual potential becomes limitless. And that is all dependent on execution and ideas. So what I come in, with a lot of teams and brands is arguing for different content and formats that you can do over this next 1 to 2 years that will actually produce results over time and build out an audience that wants to watch your videos. So much I hear, YouTube is a dumping ground for a lot of teams, and in a lot of ways I understand, because there's so much they have to handle, but they don't know that they actually have a lot of the assets to make good YouTube content. They have the creatives, they have the teams, they have the in-house production. They just need to talk and exchange ideas with a firm, a consultancy, or have someone produce end-to-end, like I do with the Warriors, of a show that maybe they wouldn't have the capabilities to do because it's such a fast turnaround. And there's a lot of ways to do it, but the main idea is that there has to be an execution and a content plan for how to master YouTube.
Before this recording, I asked you for your top 3 tips for just this. So if you are a sports team or federation or organization and came to you tomorrow wanting to build a YouTube presence, so where would they start, and what's your top tips for leveraging YouTube?
Yeah, a lot. I think when I thought about it, the 3 that I landed on is, and we talked about this early as well, is building show formats and not thinking about it as a channel, right? So YouTube, almost you have near irrelevance of how many followers or subscribers you have in the very early stages. It's just about an idea and how far you can take it. So a lot of things that I work with is, okay, where do we have access? What is missing? And especially, what does the audience need on long form? Do they need to be caught up because a team is doing so well on current? Why are they doing so well? Answering the question of like what coaching mechanisms are working on the court right now. Is it something happening off court that people are super interested in? Are we seeing some kind of super viral moment from a player, in the public doing something? You have all of these nuggets that you can think about that is driven by players, or it can be driven by the team itself. Just in sports specifically, for example. And you can think about and execute an 8+ minute video around that. I think the last video I did with the Warriors that just came out a week and a half ago was around Guy Santos, and he had a fantastic kind of rookie season in a way. It was his first, it wasn't his rookie season, but it was his first proper playing time as a starter and having proper minutes on the team. And he is an absolutely immaculate fit for what the Warriors need, especially towards the end of the season. And, beyond just having an amazing talent on the court, he has the background of coming from Brazil, having a huge fan base because of it. So we wanted to actually put together a piece about his season and why it, went so well. So we created, a 10-12 minute kind of documentary of telling the story of Guy fitting into the team, the injuries that happened, him stepping up, him actually delivering when he needed to most, giving kind of a look back for fans, and one that you can watch today or even 3 months from now and it stays just as relevant. The video is getting several thousand views every day. In the first week we had like 50,000. We're aiming for 200,000 in the next 3 months. So it's just about the idea and execution of it. So that's the first point. The second point, and it's driven by kind of what I mentioned as well, is focus on stars that you have access to. Is people want a story driven by a character that they believe in. If you keep showing up with different people all the time, you don't have someone solid to turn back to. And it doesn't just have to be the players. This can also be someone who's telling the story. The aforementioned Warriors piece that we're working on has a voiceover artist who's telling this story, and we're going to be working with him throughout the season so the Warriors get used to this iconic voice that they get reliable information from. A lot of social teams already do this by having a sit-down explainer from one of their social media managers telling whatever is needed to be communicated to the audience. You can have a very similar idea translated to YouTube, is having that key person who you trust and you believe in. And it comes from the idea of what content creators have built, is their own audiences are built on their own personality. And I think teams have the potential to do the exact same strategy with key person placement. And lastly, it's YouTube at the end of the day is an algorithm in a lot of ways, and we spoke about this also earlier. So I would always recommend optimizing for search and also fans. If you look at current YouTube channels of NBA teams or any sports teams, a lot of their titling and their thumbnails are simple, descriptions of what the video actually contains. But the biggest trick of YouTube, because it's a click and watch platform, is to actually psychologically trick the audience and also deliver on that promise. So not quite a trick, but in the beginning, an intrigue of why they should watch the video. Think about, why is this interesting? Even if it's something that's a conference piece, there's ways that you can actually format it that it opens a curiosity gap, and people actually want to know what the answer to that question is. The Warriors start doing this immaculately actually several years ago, is that they start titling their press conferences specifically about what the player talks about. Steph Curry talks about Under Armour situation. This would actually never happen on a press conference, but that's the first thing that came to mind. And then the audience would be like, oh wow, that is a lot of crazy things happening around Under Armour. I would love to learn what he is going to talk about. Is he going to leave, or what's going to happen? Instead of just revealing what it is, or instead of just saying Steph Curry, June 10 press conference at Chase Center. So there's different ways to think about the content you're publishing and how to actually make it something that an audience clicks on.
Nice. And I started thinking about, as a creator like you, I also started out I love doing video just video editing when I was young. I just wanted to make videos with my friends and stuff. But then starting working in this field, you start getting more and more geared towards, all these short form contents, and then thinking about YouTube back again, like you mentioned, it evolves, it changes, but then also get back to actually make long form content again. Find a balance, or how can you get back to making a long form again after maybe working more in the short content world?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question, because a lot of people, especially because Instagram, TikTok started to have an ad revenue share. Instagram not, but TikTok did start to have a payout for creators, but very minimally. YouTube is still the platform that is the obvious winner in terms of actually earning money on results that you receive with their ad revenue share. And so a lot of people are like, how do I transfer the existing audience that I have on, Instagram or TikTok over to YouTube? And the answer is always what we had before, as well as come up with a show that is authentic to you and the content you've made before, that you can create an 8-minute video around, or longer than 8-minute video. It can be shorter, but I recommend starting with 8 so that you can actually start, learning what it takes to tell a story for a relatively long time frame, rather than before 31 minute. And the first thing you have to think about is look at your daily life and what's happening, and the content you're making around it, and what part is interesting that you can actually expand upon. I can give you the example with NBA players. We are looking to partner with some players beyond just within the NBA, but throughout sports. We're talking to different celebrity potentials about them running their own YouTube. You start seeing this with like Will Smith. You just had several NBA players, not just Jared McCain, but Jason Tatum started YouTube. Jaylen Brown started streaming, etc. A lot of them are moving to the platform, and for them, they've, if you look at them from not as a content creator, but as an athlete, they only had time to post some Instagram reels here or there. But they want to open their doors to actually tell you about their daily life. And to their life, there's so many interesting parts, because you don't get to see that behind the scenes access as the public. So there's numerous amount of shows that we're talking about of how can we actually make this into a watchable content from beginning to end, and how can we reveal a lot of information that is interesting to the audience, and maybe to them it's mundane because they just go to training, they do recovery, and they are on the team bus, and then they're home eating dinner. Haaland was the best example that I had in the past 2 years, where he started his YouTube channel, and he's actually been relatively consistent on it. And the first one was a day in the life video that I think hit about 10 million views. There's so much that can be improved from the thumbnail, the title, the actual content in the piece, but it was authentic. Like, it was what he truly was doing in a day, and there was this massive football fan base that actually wanted to know what it looked like. And you can't tell that story in short form because there's so many aspects that you can pick and choose, but to actually put it together as like one whole piece of what happens during the day is awesome to see. Like, I'll never be a professional football player in my life, maybe in my dreams, but I can live vicariously through Haaland's day. I am also no Viking, I am 190, but I'm not as huge as him. So there's a lot of aspects that you get to just see secondhand, and you're entertained by, and it's the reason you watch Netflix, it's the reason you watch Amazon Prime or TV for documentaries, and that's why I loved making documentaries, and that's why I want to make these pieces again, because they go hand in hand of the stories you're trying to tell and the access you're opening up to people. You
yourself has gone from creator to operator and executive positions, so today, what excites you about the sports content field?
Yeah, it's in my opinion, and I'm sure everyone on the podcast would say the same about their job, because we all love what we do, but I think I'm in the best field I can be in sports media. YouTube is something that's only now getting integrated into daily operations for teams, for leagues, for players. So every day I get to wake up and almost think about like a dream person to work with and talk about this idea of doing YouTube the right way with them. And they might believe in it. I hope they do, because it's the right choice. And then we get to work together on something really creative and cool, and something that I know people will enjoy watching. So what gets me up every day, and even though I work in, kind of an operator field, is I require everyone on the team including myself, to have this creative hat. No one on our team is not creative. I always want to hear ideas from anyone I talk to. I think everyone is full of great ideas. It's just a matter of the space you put them in and how do you get that out of them. And then you're working on something that's really exciting and that you can tell an amazing story around with characters, with shows, with anything. So every day when I wake up, I think of what crazy idea do I have with a client of ours or with a potential client to work with, and why we should execute on it, and why they should believe in it and be just as excited as I am about it.
And what do you feel makes a great creative team today?
Surround yourself with people who are more intelligent in the field than you are. I think everyone that I've worked with, I always go, oh yeah, he knows much more about this than me. And I love that. I love whenever I work with someone who I know for sure they know more than me, because then I get to learn. What I always aim for is to meet people who are better at things than I am, because I have so much to learn. I mean, I know very little of what I will know hopefully in 10, 20 years. So every day I try to learn from people I talk to, from people on my team, from people outside the team, and expand on what makes good content and good videos and good storytelling. And that will always come from collaborations. You know, the reason I love my job beyond that is I get to work with in-house production teams, people who know the brand image, the brand, you know, like they're telling their own story basically. And when you work with people who are that obsessed with what they do, and you put a creativity on top of it, only really cool projects can come out of it. And all I see every day, especially in the sports world when I work, is everyone has so much passion. And I think that's such a rare thing when you think about work life. I mean, we live in Europe, we have a big emphasis here on work-life balance. But I think for me, when I wake up, I don't think about it as work. I think about it as a new challenge, a new creativity unlocked, something interesting to tell stories about. So I'm very blessed with the work that I get to do.
And you already mentioned that sports organizations today have become more like media companies in a way, or their own in-house media companies. So how do you think the sports content field or the sports creative field will look in 5 years?
Good question.
Or 2 years, because it moves so fast. So it's like 1 or 2 years is still...
Yeah, I mean, the first place where my brain goes is first the actual distribution of the content on the large media side, right? So even 5 years ago, we didn't imagine the media landscape in the NBA to look with 5 different media deals and platforms to actually view it on. So from an audience perspective, it's not the easiest thing to consume NBA content currently. So a lot of them flood to social media sites to get updates on what is happening on the teams. And so what's really exciting for these teams and in-house production houses for those teams is audiences are more and more and more hungry every single year to get more content about their favorite team, their favorite player, their favorite franchise. And so what's going to come out of that is there's going to be more and more creative ideas that come up within said production team to execute on. So what's going to start happening is not only are you going to have an in-house production team that does content for the team, you're suddenly going to become a proper studio that's making documentaries around certain events. I always go back to this because, you know, the Warriors, I think, are, out of all sports, the best franchise and in-house team to talk about because they're so ahead of the game. This year, they published 3 different documentary series about the 2015-16 season, especially of, you know, they had so many high moments, and they told the story of how it happened. So I think the best performing video, a documentary piece, a 35-minute documentary piece from them this year was around Steph Curry's half-court shot against OKC that everyone remembers, the bang bang. And they sat Steph down, they sat everyone but Clay, unfortunately, you know, Draymond was in it, Jefferson, Iguodala, like, I don't know, they had a bunch of, you know, Mike Green, you know, and they had a beautiful 35-minute piece that could be on Netflix and I would have watched it just the same. They executed on something phenomenal. Of course, the story is there to begin with, but to actually put, so much effort and money and creativity into something like this. I recommend for everyone to watch it on YouTube. It's an absolutely beautiful piece, amazing people behind it. And if it was on Netflix, you would not be surprised. It's the same, quality and execution that you would expect on there. And I think more and more teams are going to start realizing this possibility. I know the Boston Celtics did like a big behind the scenes shoot for their road to the finals last year or the year before. And there's going to be more and more of these shows and documentaries that teams will want to make around their own players, staff, and season. And I think that's the most beautiful thing, is we start from something small, like having a phone and having one singular person start working as a social media coordinator at a team, to now going, oh wow, let's make a 6-figure, 7-figure Netflix production just for YouTube, to have audiences watch something phenomenal that we're doing. So that's the future of it, and that's what's going to grow, and it's only going to get bigger and better.
Talking about all these, you mentioned so many different pieces of content today. If you would look back on all the things you have done or produced, do you have a favorite one?
Well, I love this story. We did in the summer of 2024, towards the tail end of it, there was one rumor that came out that maybe Luka Dončić would leave the Mavs and join maybe the Lakers, maybe another big franchise. And we were like, okay, it's off season. There's only so much to talk about. Let's run with it. And so we did a 10-minute video on, and we had the thumbnail all photoshopped of Luka in a Lakers jersey next to LeBron. And we did a video of like, this is why Luka will, what was the title? The master plan to steal Luka to the Lakers, something along those lines. And so, it was one rumor, and we kind of expanded on it, and we went with it because it was a really cool, and, when do you get to talk about this? We kind of did, to be honest, we didn't think it would happen, but we were like, it's an interesting story. What if it did? The video performed very badly. It had like 130,000 views. It was like a 9 or 8 of 10. And then the season goes on, the 24-25 season starts, and then February hits, and then I wake up, and then, Luka Dončić joined the Lakers. And we made another video about it. It had very quickly like 300, 400,000 views. And that old video slowly started to like go 130, 140, 150. A week later, it was sitting at 2.3 million views. And everybody, Mr. Beast commented on it. There were so many comments of like calling us prophets, because truly no one else talked about this one rumor that came out in the summer of 2024. So that video, I think, is one of the most viewed videos about the Luka Dončić trade, and we made that way before it ever happened. So it was just this really cool, like, I've never seen a graph like this on YouTube, where like you have like a slight incline and then it goes flat for 6 months, and then it has this huge takeoff out of seemingly nowhere. So I don't know, that's one of our favorite, that's the most viewed video I've ever worked on. It's 2.3 million views. I think it sits on for my own end-to-end production on the GOAT side, and that will always make me put a smile on my face, that story.
Consuming and working in the content or filmmaking field as you do you have any pet peeves?
Ooh, pet peeves. Yeah, I mean, for if we're talking about that, then thumbnail titles, immediately I go, oh no, this could be so much better just from visually seeing it. I mean, it's my daily work as I look at it, and I talk to people in a video call like this, and I go, this is and this and this and this needs to be fixed, and this is why. And then same with like the first 30 seconds of a video, dissecting. My daily job a lot of the time is opening a YouTube video up and then completely dismantling why it doesn't work many times. And so I always see the potential, especially with the big brands and teams that work on it, who have, the right personnel in front of the camera, they have the right quality of the recording, they have everything right, and it's not any of their fault. They just don't know how to put it together in a way that will work on YouTube retention. So it's just about changing your mindset about why something is clickable and how to actually execute on it. And so that's why I love my job, is because you have so many of these talented people, and you're just opening a door to something they've never really thought about, and now they can't look back. And they'll start seeing what I'm seeing, and then it kind of has this ripple effect of suddenly everybody understanding why this works and how it works.
Amazing, and thank you so much for this conversation, Samu. It's been really, really fun to learn all these nuggets of wisdom you provide. It's been really fun.
Thank you, Zach. Anytime. I'm always happy to talk, and I hope if there's any follow-up questions or anything, you always know where to find me.
And my last question always on this podcast is if you have any creator or any in the sports content field or sports creative field that you would like to hear on this podcast.
Ooh, pass the ball to the next person. I think I would choose any of the... Well, it depends. What I'm always interested in, and you have some people that they're able to bring them on the podcast, and I always love them, is professional athletes who retired and then joined the media space. Whether that's usually as a sports commentator or as an analyst, sports analyst. And I think that transition for them is something so fascinating. It's a little bit similar to like transitioning to a coaching job because you start going from playing in it to analyzing it. But it's way beyond that because you're in a completely new environment. You know, we just did this podcast and there's so many nuances of like, how do you word something? How do you stop? You know, there's so much that you get to it. It's the reason why the ex-TNT, now ESPN crew with Shaq, Kenny, and they've been on air for going on, I think, 15 years or something like that. And because they're naturally, maybe not naturally, but they learn how to be immaculate on camera and how to be entertaining. And that's a huge skill. And I think there's so much to learn about how they were able to transition into that field the right way. So anyone from who had some sort of, you know, professional athlete experience, you look at, it's so crazy that suddenly in the US, I think the most entertaining football halftime or you know, football in studio show comes from CBS, from the Galazzo, what are they called? The Galazzo team with Thierry Henry and that whole staff. I mean, they've built something so authentic and so interesting, and they have such good chemistry. And I'd love to, you know, I'd love to learn how they were put into that environment, if they knew that this would happen the way it did, you know, what team it took to bring them together to have this kind of chemistry, and how their transition has been from being a professional athlete to being in front of the camera.
It's a great suggestion. So I'll try to find someone for that episode. Thank you, Samu, for today. It's been great.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.